All right. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for not being in person. We had some bad weather, plus the water issue made things a little iffy. It reminds me during COVID, I was chair of the GREC board, and every meeting we had, I chaired was virtually. So I guess I'm used to this. Nonetheless, good morning. As mandated by KRS 156007, the charge of the council is to advise the Chief State School Officer in the Kentucky Board of Education concerning the development of administrative regulations and education policy. The Chief State School Officer shall submit all proposed administrative regulations and educational policies for review by the council prior to seeking approval of the Kentucky Board of Education. If we have any members that are attending virtually, please make sure that your video is streaming throughout the meeting and that you can be seen. At this time, we'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call. Thank you. Chair Biggerstaff. Brian Alexander.
Present.
Kirk Biggerstaff.
Here.
Harry Burchett.
Here.
Tom Cochran.
Present.
Will Hodges.
Present.
Sheila Mitchell.
Here.
Russ Tilford.
Here.
David Tremble.
Present.
And Henry Webb.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. To begin our meeting, we invite Commissioner Fletcher to provide an update on the Kentucky Department of Education.
Well, thank you, Chair Biggerstaff. I appreciate that. First of all, I want to again apologize to everyone in the room and online. Our water main break that happened yesterday caused some issues, and everything's touch and go for a little while. But late yesterday evening, we did get the call that there would be water here, and of course, we do have bottled water, and we have coffee made with bottled water. If you're in the room, gentlemen, if you're online, we apologize. We'll send you something if you need it. But again, thankful for everyone that was able to come, and again, really appreciate those that are online also too. First update, I hope that everyone had the opportunity to, I sent an update on the ACT and SAT and where we were. I gave a lot of background on that as far as where we got to this process. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood where we were and what was going on. At this current moment, we are with the Finance and Administration Cabinet that is reviewing that protest. And again, I'm not going to give details about the protest. I can't do that at this point. And we're waiting for that group to give us a decision on that protest. Hopefully, that's coming very soon. We've reached out. I want to thank Associate Commissioner Matt Ross and others in Office and Finance have reached out to the Finance Cabinet to ask for the decision to be made pretty quickly. Again, we know the angst that this causes in our school districts. We understand that, but again, the protests occurred, and then you have to go through the process of administering that protest. I gave some other background on that email, so again, folks, if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to contact me and try to help out. Also, too, one of the exciting things is that I get to do, of course, is to visit different schools. I will take the opportunity to talk a little bit about my visit to Greene County recently. And I will admit that I did not realize that Dumas Walker's was a real place. Thank you for the bottles of ski, by the way, for those of us in the room that has heard that song before. But with that being said, it's great to be out in our schools and our communities to visit our classrooms to see what's going on each and every day. I do my very best to try to be in a classroom once every couple of weeks at least. Of course, last week was all in for Ag Week. We started off in Simpsonville in Shelby County and had some opportunities there, but it's just amazing to go around to see what's going on in different districts. We have so many good stories to tell. And I will tell one more story about visiting school systems. I try my best to learn something about a school system so I can take it to the next school system and just share that. And I am a member of the Council for Post-Secondary Education, a part of their board, and I was sharing some of the stories, and a gentleman asked that was on the board said, "Why do I have to be on this board to hear that story?" So I said, that's one of the challenges that we have here at KDE. We want to tell those stories, but we also challenge the districts to tell their own story as we move forward. And I think a lot of districts do a great job of that, but there's so many great things going on, and I hate to start listing things, but again, it's amazing to see the vibrant learning, the awesome opportunities that our kids have in public education. So I do want to thank Superintendent Hodges for his invitation. I enjoyed the day. It was a great opportunity to be in Greene County and look forward to others as we move forward. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the accountability model. I think I have maybe one or two members of the Senate Education Committee to meet with one-on-one to talk about the accountability model, to give them opportunity to ask questions. We've met with also some with the House Education Committee to talk with them one-on-one about the accountability model, to give them the opportunity to talk to us about that. So a lot of positive information coming back. We also have some numbers that we've given them too about how the costs and as we move forward. So overall, some really positive information coming back from our General Assembly, a lot of good support there. Of course, the things that get the most support that we hear is about growth, going from change to growth, and I think that's everybody in the room. We'd be very much on board with that, and also local accountability. Now, there's some questions about the opt-in portions, and that's understandable, and the cost of those. So, but again, overall, been some very positive comments from our legislators, and we look forward as we move forward. So if you have the opportunity to talk to your legislators, even one-on-one about the accountability model, we really would appreciate that. We do have others across the state that we've talked about are part of the Kentucky United We Learn Council that are champions, that are talking to people, trying to get out in the communities to talk more about this. But it's great to see that positive momentum that seems to be heading in this direction. And to add to that, if you haven't had the opportunity, if you don't have people there, the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support has the Continuous Improvement Summit going on right now. A lot of the sessions that I attended yesterday included talks about local accountability, profiles of a learner, vibrant learning, instructional rounds, many other topics that are going on across the state. And when I go to a conference, I always look for the opportunity, one, to see what direction that maybe I can move my district, or what's the next steps. Here's where we are. What are next steps? And to give that opportunity to learn from others is great. The second thing is I always look for is the opportunity to share. There's always great things going on in our districts. In our district, can we share that with others? And then two, there's a little bit of affirmation. Some districts look for that affirmation. This is what we're doing, and it's an opportunity to see, other districts have either done this, they're moving on to the next level, or they're moving into this. So there's a lot of affirmation that goes on when you look at summits like this. And I think that Dr. Foster's team has done a great job. We're thankful for not only for Dr. Foster, but the team at OCIS, also our partners and districts that have people there presenting today and yesterday. So again, if you have the opportunity, if you haven't been, always every year in September we have the OCIS Continuous Improvement Summit. Highly recommend that you either present or come and attend. So if you have those opportunities. Those are just some items there. Be happy, Chair Biggerstaff, I'll turn it back over to you, and if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer those.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. We have several regulations for our review and action. First, we welcome Deputy Commissioner Thomas Tucker, Mickey Ray Marinelli, Crystal Rowland, and Sarah Medley to present proposed amendments to 704 KAR 8020 required academic standards for reading and writing.
Good morning, Chair Biggerstaff and members of LSAC, and the Commissioner's right. The Continuous Improvement Summit is outstanding. I'm looking forward to getting back there this morning. The issue before LSAC is to provide advice on the proposed amendments to 704 KAR 8.8:020, required academic standards for reading and writing. Our outstanding OTL team will discuss the process for reviewing the standards. And I want to emphasize, and I can't get out of being a recovering superintendent, is that when we look at standards revision, you want to make sure that when we revise standards, or even when you're creating curriculum, even at the local level, that is aligned with the assessments. And so our team has worked closely with our Office of Assessment and Accountability to ensure that when we go through the revision process, there is alignment. So now I'll turn the conversation over to our wonderful team here, Office of Teaching and Learning.
Well, good morning, superintendents. It's great to be with you this morning, bringing forward the new standards for reading and writing. I'm joined today by Crystal Rowland. She is the director of the Division of Program Standards, and her team supports facilitation of the standards review process. And then, as always, Sarah Medley is with us. She's the policy advisor for the Office of Teaching and Learning and did much of the legislative work around updating the regulation itself. We do have just a short PowerPoint for you today that we're going to walk through. And on the first slide, I wanted to point out, so we have our authority to bring forward this regulation because of that guiding statute. It's 158.6453, and it details the 6-year process that's in place for standards review across the content areas. And so because of that, we're able to carry forward the next round, the updated round of reading and writing standards. I did want to make a quick point, though. I had an excellent question from one of the members yesterday around some of the language that was within the regulation that we were striking through. So if you had time to look at the actual regulation, there's a paragraph at the beginning that talks about necessity, conformity, and function. And that paragraph is the department's chance to be able to explain what guiding statute allows us to bring forward the regulation. And so we are changing a little bit of that language to make sure that it complies with the other standards regulation. So this was the first one that we did. If you remember, it was back in really the process started in 2017, but we brought forward the new standards in 2019. So now we have our chance to update that language. And I just wanted to make the point, so even though the language around the Standards Review Committee and advisory panels is taken out from just that paragraph, that doesn't change anything about our process. So the advisory panels and review committee are guaranteed to participate in the process within the statute. So they're within 6453. And even, I would say, arguably more important, the process functions extremely well with the advisory panels and review committee. So we're not doing anything to change that. We're just conforming language to our other regulations. On the next slide, you'll see this is taken directly from 6453. I'm not going to read this to you, superintendents, but I did want you to see this language. And it matters because our advisory panel and review committee keep this in mind throughout the entirety of the process. So they're really looking to make targeted reviews based on the public feedback that we receive. And so I believe that it's now time to turn it over to Crystal, and she's going to walk you more closely through all the steps in the process.
Thank you, Mickey. On the screen, you'll see the process outlined in this graphic that Mickey mentioned from 6453. And so we are currently in that last row. So the standards went before the Standards and Assessment Process Review Committee a couple of weeks ago, and they found the process sufficient. And so we are here with you today preparing the standards to be presented to the board in October. On the next screen, you'll see the activities for the review and revision of reading and writing standards that are aligned with that process. It began in October of 2024 with an application for teachers to serve on the Standards and Assessment Review Committee and the 30-day public comment survey on the current standards. Teachers are the backbone of this process, and so I do want to say thank you to any superintendents, building principals who have orchestrate or allowed for teachers to be out of your building. We know that it's very challenging, but they are very critical to this process. I tell the teachers, you're the closest to the standards and the students in the classroom, and so they are very important to this process, and we appreciate you releasing them. I also say during this process, they become really a network of professionals across the state of Kentucky, and so they are an asset to your schools and your districts as they come back with just a very intimate knowledge of standards and an understanding of that vertical progression of standards as well. In January, the committees met to review the public comment and recommend changes to standards. In February through early March, those changes and the assessment blueprint were released for a 30-day public comment. And then the committees, the advisory panels and review committee came back together in March to review that public comment and make their final recommendations that are reflected in the draft standards that we're bringing forward. On the next screen, you'll see the writer's vision statement. It's on page 6 of the draft standards document. The writers envision standards that support evidence-based practices and grade level learning. The vision recognizes that reading and responding to complex texts are integral components of every K-12 classroom and provide access to rigorous grade level content. Reading comprehension is both a process and a product for developing both oral language and reading abilities, and vertical alignment of standards reflect cohesive, evidence-based practices that emphasize reflective and expressive language. On the next slide, you'll see that the initial public comment yielded 308 responses from a variety of stakeholders. Respondents were asked to keep as is or revise for each standard. They could select to revise. They were prompted to give their reasoning, suggestions, and comments. Overwhelmingly, respondents selected keep as is for standards. So for K-5, that was 95%, middle school 97%, and 95% at high school. And so a total of 12% of standards were revised during the process. On the next screen, you'll see some revisions of note. They're included here. Suggestions and comments from the survey had themes that indicated better attunement of standards to the science of reading and current research. So foundational skill revisions point to decodable text and encoding and decoding, or spelling and reading. Standard 10 for K-12 for reading literature and reading informational emphasizes the importance of both knowledge and strategies for comprehension. The writer's vision statement was updated. The document itself was updated to enhance usability. The interdisciplinary literacy practices are maintained in the draft standards. However, in the current standards, they're on every page. In the draft, they are only in the grade overviews for each, so that removes some redundancy in the document and reduced the size by about 24%. So the recommended changes were released for a 30-day public comment period as well, and we got over 400 responses during that time. No new standards were flagged for review. The assessment blueprint was released for a 30-day public comment during the same period. So the committee is reconvened to review the public comment and make their final recommended changes to standards in the assessment blueprint. Each standard appears as the example on the screen. And at the top, it has the strand, the grade level, and the standard number at the top. The guiding principle reflects the broader goal by graduation. The progression places the main standard in the middle, the matching standard for the preceding grade just before that, and then the grade after to the right. The dimensionality of the standard is included to support teacher clarity. And we're happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend approval of 704 KAR 8020 required academic standards for reading and writing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will have a roll call vote.
Brian Alexander,
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Yes.
Harry Burchett,
Yes.
Tom Cochran,
Yes.
Will Hodges,
Yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Yes.
Russ Tilford,
Yes.
David Trimble,
Yes.
Henry Webb.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next, Dr. Kelly Foster and Dr. Matthew Courtney from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support will present proposed amendments to 701 KAR 5150 non-traditional instruction program.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. As Dr. Fletcher mentioned, we are right in the middle of the Continuous Improvement Summit, so I am joining you virtually today, but my policy advisor, Dr. Matthew Courtney, is there in person. And this summer, we put together a work group that had members that were parents, teachers, principals, superintendents, as well as legislators to look at the non-traditional instruction regulation. And we've made some amendments to that reg to make it a stronger regulation, to make clarity for school districts. We took the recommendations of the working group, as well as we've developed an implementation guide that will also be available to schools and districts. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Courtney, and he is going to walk you through the amendments of the regulation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to quickly go through the amendments to the regulation. Then, of course, we're happy to address any questions. Before I do that, just to reiterate what Dr. Foster said, all of these changes were made to really improve transparency through the NTI process. That's really the lens that we approach this work with. Starting on page 2, you'll see some new definitions have been added to the regulation. A definition for continuation of learning, for learning loss, and for district non-traditional instruction contact. So that is one really transparency piece right there. We are going to ask everyone, most districts are already doing this through our existing processes, but we are going to require everyone to identify a non-traditional instruction contact. On page 3, you'll see a couple of changes we're making to the non-traditional instruction application itself. Of course, that's done through the continuous improvement platform now. In addition to all the existing requirements, you will see item 12. Sorry, I'm on page 4. Thank you. You'll see item 12, which is the district's plan for collecting and archiving evidence of student learning samples. You've always had to collect evidence of student learning. The plan for how you collect that is a little opaque, so we're asking districts to clarify that, as well as the name and contact information for that district NTI point of contact so the public knows who that is. At the bottom of that page, you'll see a clarifying statement that an approved NTI plan is only effective for 1 school year. So you turn those in the spring for the following school year, and they have to be updated and resubmitted every year. That's not really a change, just a clarification. On page 5, a change here that any amendments that are made to the plan during the course of the school year cannot be implemented until after they are reviewed and approved by the department. And then in section 3, some updates to the documentation of student learning. So if we go to actually page 6, this is where the new list starts. We've expanded the list of what counts as evidence of clear continuation of learning. So in addition to examples of student work and lesson plans, which have always been allowable, we are now going to allow reports from online learning management systems, examples of teacher-student communication, or other documentation deemed appropriate by the NTI instructional contact in consultation with the department. So we're opening the door. If there are other ways that you think your district can archive this evidence of learning better, we're open to hearing that and having that conversation with you. We are also making some clarifications on what is required to be maintained, what the minimum threshold is. Of course, districts can always go beyond the minimum threshold in a regulation, but we've established a minimum threshold for kindergarten, students in kindergarten through 5th grade as one piece of clear evidence for each grade level for reading, math, and one other content area for each instructional day. And for students 6th through 12th grade, one piece of clear evidence in each grade level and each content area for each non-traditional instructional day. So the idea being that a student is more or less taking the same courses that they would be taking had they been there in person, that each course has something demonstrating that that instruction was provided. And we're thinking here about the course, not the section. So if you're a high school English teacher and you teach 4 sections of freshman English, that's just one piece of evidence that we're requiring you to collect, one piece that covers the whole freshman English course. If you teach freshman English and AP Lit, then that would be 2 pieces of evidence, no matter how many times you repeat that course. In section 4, so bottom of page 6, continuing on to page 7, you'll see some clarifications related to monitoring. We have always had monitoring provisions within the NTI regulation, and many of you have participated in those monitoring processes, but we've just made some clarification that that can be on-site or desk monitoring or distance monitoring. So just a piece of clarification there. And then going on to page 9, a new section 5 is related to corrective action, really providing some transparency for districts about what would happen if you are out of compliance with the NTI regulation. Of course, you can lose the ability to do NTI in your district if you remain out of compliance, but we've rather created a process here where you can get back into compliance through a corrective action protocol. So that brings us to the end of the changes, and Sorry, I got a little ahead of Glitzazan there. That brings us to the end of the changes, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I would ask that the council entertain a motion to recommend approval of the amendments to 701 KAR 5150 non-traditional instruction program. Is there a motion?
Motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. At this time, we will have a roll call vote.
Brian Alexander,
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Yes.
Harry Burchett,
Yes.
Tom Cochran,
Yes.
Will Hodges,
Yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Yes.
Russ Tilford,
Yes.
David Trimble,
Yes.
Henry Webb.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all very much for the
Thank
information.
you.
Up next, we welcome Dr. Greta Hilton, Dr. Thomas Williams, and Melody Cooper to discuss proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3410 preschool education programs for 4-year-old children.
Good morning, superintendents. We have before you 704 KAR 3410, and this is the preschool regulation. It was up for expiration, so we are recertifying that. And within the proposed amendments, we have clarified language, modernized the language. It's been several years since this regulation has been updated. And we've also taken this opportunity to strengthen some of the sections. With me, I have Dr. Thomas Williams, who's the administrator of the preschool unit, as well as Melody Cooper, who's the policy advisor for OSEAL. And Melody is going to walk us through each change, and then we're happy to entertain questions or comments as we conclude.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as possible because, as Dr. Hilton said, it's been a while since we've had updates, and this is a pretty long regulation. So just stop me if you have any questions. So there at the very beginning, we're updating language from at-risk to at-risk of educational failure to align with the preschool statute. So that's just a minor change there. In the definitions, section 1, we are modernizing from daycare to childcare and using the definition that's used by the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. We're adding definitions for evidence-based and paraprofessional, since they will both be used in this regulation moving forward. Clarifying that screening does not include initial evaluation to determine if the child is a child with a disability. In section 2, eligibility, we are aligning the date, so children must be 4 by August 1st instead of by October 1st to align with statute. We also added what is a current federal requirement, and it did come to our attention after we turned in these materials for final review that using the word authorized by could be more inclusive than what was intended. So the intention is to include children who would qualify under McKinney-Vento or any other requirement that's federal. So I'd like to propose changing authorized by to the extent required by ESEA. And so that's what we bring for you for review. Moving on there, we made giving districts a little bit more time to determine eligibility before the start of the next school year. In section 4, interagency agreements, we're removing a couple of pieces that are difficult for districts to track or monitor, and then clarifying language about what's required under the Kentucky Constitution, just to align with that. Section 5, enrollment, we're making a minor change from active recruitment process to continuous recruitment process, and clarifying that eligible children shall not be placed on a waiting list, which is current practice. Then updating language there with disability instead of handicapping condition. In Section 5, subsection 2, there were several things that needed to be brought up to date with current statute as far as what's required, the different documentation that's required for enrollment. So all of that's listed there. In subsection 4, adding that daily attendance shall be maintained in the statewide student information system. And then adding something here for district flexibility, adding that subsection 5, so that students who are eligible only as at risk of educational failure, who miss 16 consecutive school days without a documented excuse, may be unenrolled and remain eligible in accordance with this administrative regulation when the parent or guardian gives written consent or at least 4 documented attempts to re-engage the parent or guardian are unsuccessful. So we're adding that in there based on some feedback we've gotten from districts. Under Section 6, program operation, we are clarifying some duties there that may occur when they have those 5th days without students. Also adding a full day, 4-day-a-week program option with that 5th day for the services to children and their families. Clarifying that the Commissioner of Education approves locally designed programs and that and that approval would take place before initial implementation and before the locally designed program is amended. In subsection 2, adequate time shall be allotted between sessions instead of saying prior to each session, where we would be getting into maybe a teacher start day there. Let's see here, moving on to subsection 3 there. This is another one where we're aligning with the current statute about staff break times that's required now. And removing of the half-day program since a full-day program option was added earlier. Subsection 5, this is clarifying the maximum class size. Nothing's changed with maximum class size. We're just moving a couple of the required pieces there to a new subsection so that they're both together under one written policy. So not changing a requirement, just moving those so that they're grouped together. We're modernizing that parental involvement to family involvement. And then we're also replacing home visits with family visits to give a little bit more flexibility for both districts and families, and still clarifying that family visits could be conducted in a home or a secondary location and shall be in person unless the parent or guardian requests a virtual family visit. In subsection 9, we're adding that the developmental screeners that are given would be administered within 30 days of enrollment and be valid and reliable. Removing some redundant language there that appears throughout the rest of the regulation that's covered in that content. And then keeping that the results and next steps would be communicated with families, and also adding that trained personnel must administer the screener. Adding that the developmental screener be tracked and documented for all 4-year-old children in the program. Okay, and then again, they're just simplifying some of that language about sharing with the parent or guardian. And then moving on, you'll see some more language that we've struck because it was redundant throughout the rest of the regulation. We were trying to find ways to simplify this long regulation as much as we could. Section 7, you'll see, is a new section called Learning Environment. It was previously part of Section 6, which was just a huge section, so we broke that up into 2. Let's see here. I think those are just minor changes there to modernize language and, sorry, okay. So moving on to subsection 2, adding that the curriculum shall be evidence-based and aligned with the domains of Kentucky's early childhood standards. An evidence-based curriculum. And then adding a few things in there just about daily activities. So adding parts in there for interactive literacy and numeracy instruction, and then play-based instead of spontaneous activities, free choice center work, and routines to establish child familiarity with the daily schedule. So just bringing it up to date with what's in practice in preschool programs now. Moving on to subsection 4, and this was renumbered quite a bit, so let me know if you're not seeing where we are. Again, we're just updating language from spontaneous to play-based, modernizing some language the way that it's being used now, bringing descriptions of required center areas up to date with what's common practice now, and adding a technology center, adding some parameters around technology centers and screen time so that those are developmentally appropriate and do not replace active play, engagement, or interaction. I'm trying to make sure that I don't skip anything here. And then including that assessments that are already given would be valid and reliable. And updating language around the domains of those assessments that would be covered. So moving on to section 8, which is under personnel, this is where we made some changes to strike some older language and align with KAR Chapter 16 under the Education Professional Standards Boards. Now, on that one that's struck about 2002, 2003, that does not impact teachers who are currently grandfathered. It just removes an outdated process that cannot be used anymore. So those grandfathered teachers will not be impacted, but we can clean this up a little bit. It also clarifies current practice that any of those lead teachers who were grandfathered would not continue to serve as lead teachers after that initial employment that allowed for the grandfathered status is terminated. And then we're updating teacher assistant to paraprofessional, which was why it was defined earlier in the regulation. Adding some clarifying, really, language around what the lead teacher is responsible for, and also the part about lead teachers who are also assigned to be preschool coordinators have a little bit of a different ratio for only 34 children total, which has always been there. Section 9, facilities and transportation, very minor stuff here, really just aligning with statute language. Also adding about some transportation. Again, these are a couple of things where we just moved something where it made sense. So during departure and arrival, children would be supervised by a school employee. And then if transportation is still optional for preschool, but if you're transporting on the bus, that they would be released hand to hand for safety. And then under section 10, program evaluation, we're changing success of participating children as they complete the preschool program to growth of participating children as they enter the primary school program, which should be a little bit easier for districts to track there. And then adding, clarifying that under the Kentucky Department of Education, determining the effectiveness of the statewide preschool program and local school district adherence to this administrative regulation. And then section 7 is new, but that's where we incorporate by reference Kentucky's early childhood standards. So that was a lot. Thank you for your patience. Are there any questions?
All right. Hearing no questions, I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the amendments to 704 KAR 3410 preschool education programs for 4-year-old children. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. At this time, we will have a roll call vote.
Brian Alexander.
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff.
Yes.
Harry Burchett.
Yes.
Tom Cochran.
Yes.
Will Hodges.
Yes.
Sheila Mitchell.
Yes.
Russ Tilford.
Yes.
David Trimble.
Yes.
Henry Webb.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. Thank you all very much for the presentation. At this time, Dr. Meredith Brewer will present proposed amendments to the 704 KAR 3406 Superintendent Training Program and Assessment Process.
Good morning. We do have a slide deck for you on this regulation. So if we go to the next slide, just a little bit of background. So KRS 156111 does mandate that KDE establish a superintendent training program and assessment center, and that KBE adopt regulations to govern the content, hours, and assessments associated with that program. The statute was updated in 2014, but this regulation has not been amended since its promulgation in 1994. So there was a lot of outdated language in the regulation, so we needed to pursue some amendments to get it in alignment with the statute. So we go to the next slide. So in summary, the expectations for the program as outlined in the regulation is that any individual who is hired for the first time as a superintendent in a public school district must complete the program within 2 years of starting the position. And there's 3 parts to the program. There are superintendent training modules, an executive coaching and mentoring opportunity, and a comprehensive superintendent assessment. Next slide. So a slight change from what was in the regulation that I do want to highlight. So the superintendent training modules, so that professional development, previously had particular hours up to a certain amount of time spent on each topic broken out in the regulation. The statute expanded the list of components that needed to be included in the training. And so rather than breaking out the number of hours by topic, there's an expectation for a minimum of 42 hours of professional development in the modules, up to 72 hours for the entirety of the course. You'll notice that that does satisfy the annual ELA requirements of 21 hours per year, so a 2-year training program does satisfy that expectation. Next slide. So the executive coaching and mentoring has 2 parts. So each participating superintendent will be paired with a mentor who has experience as a superintendent to provide them direct mentoring throughout their participation in the training program. Additionally, there's an expectation for an executive coach to provide training to the participants as well, similar to what is occurring in the program that is currently in operation. Okay, so the comprehensive superintendent assessment is sort of at the conclusion of the program. There's an expectation that every participant demonstrate proficiency on the assessment, and that proficiency can be determined through the production of performance-based projects, portfolios, capstones, so some sort of work product to demonstrate proficiency on each of the components that are included in the training modules. That proficiency level will be established by an advisory committee. Next slide. There is an opportunity for individuals who feel like, based on the components that are included in the training modules, that their prior experience would afford them the opportunity to show that proficiency without completing the training module to do so. However, they have to substitute the number of hours that was associated with that module based on the provider, the designated number of hours, to equal that number of training hours. So in other words, you can't opt out of the entirety of the training, take the assessment, and conclude the course. You would need to have that minimum of 42 hours of professional development as part of the full training opportunity. It does allow for the individual who is using this sort of waiver opportunity to determine what content they want to pursue for that supplemental period of time, but there is an expectation that all participants have the same number of training hours. Okay, next slide. Upon completion of the program, there is an expectation that superintendents continue to receive at least 21 hours of continuing education, and they have to outline that plan with their professional growth training plan. The statute does stipulate that at least 3 hours of that continuing education needs to be within school finance and 3 hours within ethics, and so that is in the statute, and so that was included here. So there is flexibility for the remaining hours, but 6 of those hours are explicitly stated in the statute to be on those topics. Any questions?
So it's my understanding that this is just basically bringing the old regulation up to what we're currently doing. Is that correct?
Yes, so the statute that was amended in 2014 is obviously what has been in effect. And so the superintendent training program has already been updated to really reflect much of what's in this regulation. So those of you who have gone through the training in the last 10 years, this probably seems familiar to you as opposed to the paper and pencil test that was outlined in the regulation in 1994.
Right, gotcha. Thank you. I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the amendments to 704 KAR 3406 Superintendent Training Program and Assessment Process. Is there a motion?
Motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion, a second. At this time, we'll do a roll call vote.
Brian Alexander.
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff.
Yes.
Harry Burchett.
Yes.
Tom Cochran.
Yes.
Will Hodges.
Yes.
Sheila Mitchell.
Yes.
Russ Tilford.
Yes.
David Trimble.
Yes.
Henry Webb.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. The final item for review and action on today's agenda concerns the expiration of administrative regulations pursuant to KRS 13A3102. Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel Todd Allen will present this item.
Thank you. You can probably tell that we've been doing some review of old regulations around here, and that's what my topic is about as well. So in the course of doing so, we identified 6 regulations that we believe are no longer necessary and are proposing that the Kentucky Board of Education allow to expire. The way our administrative regulations work is when an ordinary administrative regulation is filed, it remains active for 7 years. If the agency doesn't take some action at the end of that 7-year period, either to certify it to say we want it to remain in place without amendment, or make changes to it, then it naturally expires. And these 6 regulations that are listed in the staff note we have reviewed and say we think that they should just naturally expire at the end of their 7-year term, which will be November of this year. They are 701 KAR 5140 Districts of Innovation. As you know, statute changed during the last session of the General Assembly. Districts of Innovations went away. We now have a new waiver process that is in place, and we went through that regulation that we have. 702 KAR 7130, approval of innovative alternative school calendars. This was based on language that was in a budget bill that we promulgated this regulation. That budget language has gone away since then, so it's no longer necessary. 702 KAR 1150, employment of KTRS retiree in a full-time position. Again, during the last legislative session, General Assembly passed some legislation that changed that process, so everything that we have in regulation is no longer necessary. 702 KAR 6075, reports and funds. Our Office of Finance and Operations found that many of those requirements are already governed by federal regulations or other state law, so this is just duplicative and we don't need it on the books. 704 KAR 7070, guidelines for dropout prevention programs, and then 704 KAR 10022, elementary, middle, and secondary school accreditation. And I'll pause to see if you all have any questions. If you do have specific questions about any of them, I'll probably phone some friends from the program area behind me.
All right, no questions. I would ask the council to entertain a motion to recommend regulations detailed in the staff notes, specifically 701 KAR 5140, Districts of Innovation, 702 KAR 7130, approval of innovative alternative school calendar, 702 KAR 1150, employment of KTRS retiree in a full-time position, 702 KAR 6075, reports and funds, 704 KAR 7070 Guidelines for Dropout Prevention Programs, and 704 KAR 10022 Elementary, Middle, and Secondary School Accreditation to expire pursuant to KRS 13A3102. Man, that was a mouthful. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, at this time, we will have a roll call vote.
Brian Alexander,
Yes.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Yes.
Harry Burchett,
Yes.
Tom Cochran,
Yes.
Will Hodges,
Yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Yes.
Russ Tilford,
Yes.
David Trimble,
Yes.
Henry Webb.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have anything else to discuss before we adjourn? All right, thank you for a very productive meeting. Our next meeting will be November 25th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
We have a motion and a second. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.